Okay. If you want to open your hymn books to 127, we're going to be talking about this hymn, number 127. This is my Father's world. That's our study for the hymn study, and to talk about that. And when you open it there, you see the top left. You got the top left. That's the author. His name is Maltby D. Babcock, 1901. And then you got this other fellow, Franklin Shepard, 1915. And we'll talk about those dates on down here in just a little bit. But that's our study here, and that's what we're going to talk about. First off, we talk about this Maltby Davenport. That's what the D stands for, Babcock. Got a picture there up on the screen of him. And, kind of seeing the picture sort of kind of puts a face on things as you think about this guy. Anyway, the little bit of history about him. He was born in Syracuse, New York on August the 3rd, 1858, so a long time ago, a century before last. And being born there in Syracuse, he went to the Syracuse University. He was a champion baseball pitcher, an outstanding varsity swimmer. He was also poetically minded, and we'll see that. Anyway, on October 4th, 1882, he married Catherine Elliott Tallman. They had 2 children. Both of them died in infancy, and that's a sad thing as you think about a person, or this real person of history. I preached at various churches in New England, and one of the churches that he was at was in Lockport, New York. And this is the place that he had a habit of taking morning walks on the top of the hill north of Lockport, where there was a full view of Lake Ontario and the surrounding countryside. It's kind of a ridge. It's sort of a ridge that sort of runs through Ohio and all the way up, actually over into Michigan there. Anyway, it's kind of interesting, but that's the history, that he would walk out there and you could see over there into Lake Ontario and everything else. And this was kind of the start of it. He would tell his wife, like, honey, I'm going out to see my Father's world, being a religious fella, and I'm going out to see my Father's world, talk about going outside, because he believed that God created the world. And God did create the world. And that would be true. God is the creator. And so that was, of course, kind of the inspiration, or it moved him to write the poem, This Is My Father's World, which was put to music as a hymn after his death, because he died in 1901. And anyway, this Franklin Shepard from 1852 to 1930 was a well-known hymn composer who set the poem This Is My Father's World to music. And, of course, he died, this Maltby Babcock passed away on May the 18th, 1901, while traveling in Naples, Italy. Didn't really say. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Didn't really say what happened, but relatively young, I think 43 years old, fairly young fellow died. And but anyway, it might have been forgotten, but this poem was set to music, and we're going to sing it as the invitation hymn momentarily, and we're going to think about it, because really there's great thoughts in this poem, because really the scriptures talk about that creation is a testimony to God. And creation gives testimony. And we'll look at the 3 passages. Asher read the last one for us. But notice there in Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, there in verse 18 beginning, Paul says, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has showed it unto them. So how did God manifest himself? Did he just appear and, oh, look, there's God in the sky? No. He appeared by creation itself. For the invisible things of him, that is of God, from the creation of the world, are clearly seen. Well, how are they clearly seen about God, this invisible God? Well, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and deity, so that they are without excuse. God's testimony. It's like, you got all kinds of artists in the world. And if you've ever noticed on a painting, here you got a painting up here on the wall, and down here in the corner, people will sign their name to it. That's because there's lots of artists. Well, God didn't have to sign his name to everything, because he made everything. It's obvious. He made trees. He made bugs. He made animals. He made the mountains. He made the oceans. He made the heavens. I mean, just on and on. God didn't have to sign his name to everything because he was the only artist. He was the only creator. But now like artists who paint painting, they got to sign, oh, well, that's a Da Vinci painting, that's a Michelangelo painting, or et cetera, et cetera. Not so when you talk about God who made all things. And so it's just a testimony because it was made and God made it. And there in verse 21, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Creation itself, you just can't go out and see things, hear things, smell things, look at things, and not see the very hand of God. It's like the other day I was walking, and anyway, it's like a morning glory, and I picked that bloom off, and I was looking at the back of that, and those 5 points, those little arms on the back of that flower, perfect symmetry. That wasn't some sort of cosmic accident. God made those flowers to do that. I mean, the testimony of creation itself. And then in Psalm 24 verse 1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Yeah, God made everything. I mean, human wisdom says, well, it was blind chance, it was dumb luck. There was a big bang sometime in eons past, and over billions of years, for some reason, life sprang from dead elements, but it just evolved. That's called chemical evolution. It just evolved into life. And then this life, it evolved and from a one-celled animal to amoeba, and then to a reptile, and then it crawled out on the land, and then it morphed into different mammals, and then the mammals morphed into chimpanzees, and then into gorillas, and then they morphed into human beings. And that's the story of creation and how we got here. No, that's just fairy tale. I mean, if this was going on, if that was true, you would see it over and over again. Now, there is special evolution, that is limited change, and that the Bible talks about. There's no problem about that. That is, you see different, like in the story of Jacob. He was dealing with his daddy-in-law's animals, and some were striped, and some were ringed, and etc., and spots. And they changed, and you see that in the Bible. Yeah, there's change. You see different types of dogs, you see different types of cats. But cats don't in time produce dogs, and dogs in time don't produce tigers, and tigers in time don't produce elephants, and elephants don't produce zebras. No, I mean, zebras are zebras, and they have different shapes of zebras and different stripes, but they're still zebras or zebras. And fruit flies, what's unique about them, you can have a whole life cycle of a fruit fly in a little over 2 weeks. You can have an egg laid, the egg latch, the larvae grow and turn into a fly, and then reproduce another generation. And so they have done all kinds of experiments with fruit flies, and they've bombarded them with gamma rays and radiation and chemicals. And they'll have fruit flies that have extra wing, and fruit flies with no wing, fruit flies with extra leg, fruit flies with extra eyes, fruit flies, all kinds of variations of fruit flies. And they've been doing this for over 100 years in science. And you see all these variations. But what do you have? You still have fruit flies. Fruit flies didn't become bumblebees. Fruit flies don't become wasps. Fruit flies, variation fruit flies, but fruit flies are fruit flies. And that's what you have. And that's what the Bible talks about. Every kind reproduces after its kind. Cows produce cows, and elephants produce elephants, and whales produce whales. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the fact of science. That's the experience of our life and what we see. Special evolution within, changes within each species. Yeah, you see some of that. And then, as we saw there in Psalm 19 that Asher read for us, the heavens declare the glory of God. Tonight we have a celestial special tonight. We have a blue moon tonight in Kentucky. Siler, do you know what a blue moon is? Macy, do you know what a blue moon is? No. Danny knows what it is. Lisa, do you know what a blue moon is? It's a yes or no question. No, she don't know. She don't know. A blue moon is not that the moon turns blue. It's a second full moon in 1 month. We had a full moon on May 1st, I believe. We're having a full moon on May 31st. The second full moon in any given month is a blue moon. And it only happens once in a blue moon, which is about 42 months, about 3.5 years. So if you don't get out and see the blue moon, you're going to have to wait 3.5 years before you experience another one. It takes about that long. For the days and the cycles and the months, it takes a while. So that's how the phrase once on a blue moon. But the blue moon is that second full moon in the same calendar month. Anyway, so, the heavens declare the glory of God. And you have lunar eclipses. You have the solar eclipse. I've seen 2 solar eclipses. That first one a few years ago went down to Tennessee. And then the last one we had went with Gary and Barbara, and we went up into Indiana and see that. It's spectacular. It only lasts for a little bit. And the next one that's coming up is supposed to last like 5 minutes. So if you didn't see those 2, and you get a chance, try to be in the path of a full solar eclipse. It's just so interesting. In the middle of the day, the light goes out, and you see some stars up in the sky in the afternoon. I mean, it's incredible. It's super interesting, super neat. It was that first one I went to down in Tennessee. It was like it was summer, it was August, and it was hot. It was like 92 degrees. And as the sun slowly was covered more and more, the temperature started going down, down, down. And then that last little bit, it was like the light turned off. You could see some stars. And it was very pleasant. It was like about maybe 76 degrees. Went from 92 to 76 in the middle of the afternoon of August. And like that, it started lighting back up. And it went along. We're back up to 92 degrees. So there you are. It's part of the glories of heaven. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament showeth his handiwork. And all that language there, he says, there is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. When you look up into the stars, or you look up in the sky of a morning sky, an evening sky, what do you see? Maybe you see reds and oranges and yellows, and then you see blue coming, and you see some clouds, you see maybe some silhouettes of trees. And something else you see, I am. I am that I am. God's signature is there. The heavens declare his glory. It shows his handiwork. And that's what this song is all about. This is my Father's world. So let's look at that. Got all the lyrics up here, and let's talk about them. All right, this is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and around me rings the music of the spheres. And there's all kinds of sounds that you hear. It might be in the evening, you hear the frogs or the toads croaking. It might be watching the lightning bugs at night. It might be seeing, like yesterday evening, I was laying on the hammock and I was out there in the chair swing, and it was the late evening sun. It was beaming down, and there under that you could see where it was lighting up the hammock, and you could see the silhouette of those mosquitoes. They were there too. And I had my cell phone. I was looking. It's like a mirror when it's not on. Boom, got that one. Yeah, you see God everywhere. I mean, even that little pesky mosquito, there's a lot of complexity into mosquito, of how they live, reproduce, etc. And then the second part of verse 1, this is my Father's world, I rest me in the thought of the rocks and trees, of the skies and seas, his hands the wonders wrought. Just like the first song, have you ever seen Jesus? You stand at the ocean, you see Jesus. You stand at looking at a little baby, you see Jesus. I mean, you just see Jesus everywhere. You look at flowers, you look at the beautiful sunsets, the sunrise, you look at the stars in the sky. I mean, you just see the Father's world, that God, the Creator, he's the one that made all these things. Then you get to the second stanza. This is my Father's world. The birds their carols sing. The morning light, the lily white declare their Maker's praise. The other morning, I got up, and anyway, it was about 4:30, and it was kind of cool outside. Of course, air conditioning, it really dries out the air. And so anyway, I pulled the window up because it was cooler, but there was some humidity comes in, and I could hear the birds singing out there. You know, when the windows are shut, got those double pane windows, and you don't hear anything. You can't even hear the train or anything else. You just don't hear stuff. But there I was, just hearing those birds sing. It reminded me of an article I read one time. Anyway, talking about how birds sing, it actually affects plants because it signals to the plants for them to open the stoma, that is the bottom of the leaf, to open up to breathe. That's pretty fascinating. This fellow read something about that, of how that done that, and he put recordings of birds singing in his garden, and I thought they were crazy. But his corn was like 8 foot tall. It's like, well, they didn't think it was that crazy, because somehow the bird singing does affect plants. I mean, it's fascinating. It's an interesting thing in the world that we live in. And there are lots of things like that we may not be fully aware, but then man figures it out kind of in the long run. It's kind of like human think that we're so much smarter than God, and here's a perfect illustration of God's wisdom versus man's wisdom. So here out in California, in the Sierra Madre Mountains, there are these giant sequoia trees, and they are big. I don't know if you've ever seen them in person. They're big. They're unique. You're in the forest, and there's one. They got this burnt orange look, and there's a sequoia. Oh, there's one over there. Oh, there's one over there. And you go up there, and you can kind of push on the bark, and it's kind of spongy. And their philosophy was, hey, forest fires are bad. We don't want these trees to burn down, and so we need to put out all forest fires. So that was the practice for decades. Put out all forest fires. Put out all forest fires. Well, then over time, we don't see any baby sequoias coming on. Why don't we see baby sequoias in the forest? Now, they're big trees, and they see the cones up there, and they fall down on the ground. I picked up a couple. I got a couple somewhere. I don't know where they are. But why don't we see baby sequoias? Then they figured out you got to have forest fires. And forest fires come along as part of nature because it heats up, burning the filth down there. It doesn't really, maybe the bark burns just on the outward surface, but it doesn't really affect the giant sequoias. But it heats up, and those cones open up. I think I remember watching a show on that, and Morgan Freeman, he says 168 degrees, they open up, and the seeds fall down. The filth down there burns away, and those seeds fall to the ground, and the filth and the clearing now, and baby sequoias come. Men thought they were smarter than God. We need to put out all forest fires. No, you gotta have forest fire to have baby sequoias. We'll just control. We'll let forest fires, but we'll just control, not let it burn everything all at once. And so they changed policy because they thought they were smarter than God, but they're not smarter than God. And you see the wisdom of God everywhere. This is my Father's world. He shines in all that is fair. In the rustling grass I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. All kinds of noises that you hear. I remember one time we went out to see Yellowstone, and then went down to Grand Teton. Me and this other fellow, we rented a tent cabin. Tent cabins had some board slats, and part of it was canvas, and that's where we spent the night. And that was cool because there's no TVs, and had a little wood stove. In the day it's warm, but at night it gets pretty cool because it's all high elevation out there, about 6,000 to 7,000 feet. But we went to bed because there's just one little light in there. We flipped off the light, and we're laying there in those bunk beds, and they give us these sleeping bags, and we get up in that, and we're sitting there listening to coyotes in the night, and the wolves and stuff like that, the night sound. It is music. It is part of God's wonderful creation. Yeah, this is our Father's world. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems also strong, God is the ruler yet. And we've been studying a lot about that in our study in Job. Job suffered so much, and things like, where's God? What? Where's he at? He's where he's always been. He sits at the right hand. He sits there upon his throne in heaven. People wondered about that with the Assyrians. Where are the Assyrians, and where's God at? Well, he's on his throne. Yeah, Sennacherib, he was the head of the great mighty Assyrian nation, but then they fell. And then the Babylonians came on the scene, and where's God at? It looked like, hey, we're getting creamed. Yeah, God's the same place. He raised up the Medo-Persians and brought the Babylonians down. And et cetera, that's the way it went. God is always on his throne. You get the book of Revelation, the early Christians were being severely persecuted. Where's God at? Well, he's upon his throne. And John was allowed to see God upon his throne in chapters 4 and 5, and Jesus at his right hand. Yeah, it looks like things are going bad and haywire, but God allows certain things to happen. Just like it happened with Job. And we talked about that this morning in Bible class. And here we are in 2026, May 31st, 2026. We're studying about Job and learning from Job. Did Job think when all this befell him, they're going to be talking about me thousands of years down the line? He didn't think about that. He was just in the midst of trials and tribulations. Couldn't understand. Couldn't figure it out. We have the book and we know how it all ended. And, we sort of fast forward through all that. But it was very perplexing to Job. But God had a plan, and God was using this. And it wasn't that God brought these sufferings upon him. He allowed the devil to do it. The devil's the one that brought all these terrible sufferings upon Job. But there was a cosmic conflict of good versus evil. And God was saying, no, my servant Job, he's a good guy. And the devil, the slanderer, he was just dogging him. No, he's not. You do all these things, he's going to curse you. He didn't. Yeah, and so here we are studying about 1,000 years down the line. And when tragedy happened, when we lost our son Ben, it was a dark day. It's hard. And you think, well, why is this happening to me? But I thought about Job. Am I better than Job? That suffering not going to come to me. If it happened to me, it happened to Job. When we think about Job, and we learn from Job, and we're encouraged by Job, he hung in there, he was patient, he was steadfast. And James said, look at him and think about him because he's steadfast. Yeah, it may seem strong, but God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. In battle we must try. Jesus who died shall be satisfied. The kingdom turns back to God. Now, Jesus is ruling at the right hand of God, and he will yet rule when he brings to end the last enemy to be destroyed when he resurrects all from the dead. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We face God in the day of judgment, the ultimate separation of the righteous, of the sheep and the goats, and we step into eternity future. That God, once again, the kingdom turns back to God. We're going to sing this song. If you're here, you've never obeyed the gospel, you could do so. You could look and see God everywhere. Believe upon him. Believe upon his son Jesus who died. And would you be willing to believe upon Christ and then to repent and turn from your wrongdoing? Jesus commands all men everywhere to repent. Would you be willing to say, yeah, I believe Jesus Christ, Son of God. Yes, I believe Jesus is God's Son. And would you be willing to obey his command to be baptized for the remission of sins? You could do that even tonight and become a Christian, and God then will become your spiritual father once again as you enter into a relationship through Christ Jesus. We're going to sing this song to your encouragement. If you need to obey the gospel and you need any help, you let us know. While together as we stand and as we sing.